idea. It's not totally original. But the reason we're having it really is because of Sherry, because she lets me call her with every idea. Some of them good, some of them bad. I got in the position of moderator probably because of questionable life choices, but I'd rather not open those wounds. And my only real experience with moderating is involved in divorce. So. Okay, so really, honestly, the reason we're doing this, the reason that I came up with the idea, the whole nature of the idea wasn't really from TED Talks. This is aptly named because it kind of follows a similar protocol. But the real reason this came to mind was when I started thinking about going to training events like these or any training event. My idea of top trainers, they're getting older. They're getting older. Perfect example right in front of me.
I'm sorry, what?
But it's true, right? And where's the new blood coming in? And how do they get into this? And it ends up the real way is submit a class to whatever training conference that may be. And it's come up with 3-4 hours of material. And that's daunting, right? But what if you have some ideas or some theories or a couple of case studies that are very interesting? They're not enough to carry a class. And you kind of would like to get up there and try this. 3 hours, that's a lot. That's a lot to try to carry all on your own. So how can we divide it up a little bit and let everybody come up with something they can convey in 20, 30 minutes, under an hour, that they can be very knowledgeable about, have material, and not have the weight of carrying the entire class by themselves. So that's the nature of this. And we got submissions, and this is the group we ended up with, so I'm sorry. It was out there on social media to submit, and I'm hoping, I really do hope that this takes off and this is a regular occurrence, and you guys in the audience here, next year, please submit some case studies, some ideas for case studies. You don't even have to have them ready to go. Have some ideas. You know what, I run into this often, this trips up my colleagues, I help out some other shops around the area, they get tripped up on this is how I go about fixing this or approaching that, or I've been to some classes about this and you know what, I kind of disagree, I have this way and I think it works better. Submit the ideas and hopefully you can be up here. Sound good? Any questions?
Rich, I don't know how he's talking. He's always going like this.
You're our first time attendee of Vision, correct?
Yes.
So we decided to stick them in front of a group of people.
You can do it. Show us your boobs.
All right, so we're going to be going over critical reading and analysis of service information, which is a whole lot of fun, right? Everybody likes sitting there reading through pages upon pages of service information. Thankfully, everybody before me has done an amazing job filling in all the gaps I was worried about. So we're going to go backwards a little bit. So what is critical reading? Basically, we sit there, we evaluate our text, we identify any good parts, any things that we like, what is strong in, we find what we're missing. From there, we look at the overall big picture. We're basically scrolling through it real fast, trying to find, is it telling me what I think I need to know? Is it telling me anything I do need to know? What am I missing? We all know some data, Mitchell, even OEM. Depending on what's going on, if they give you everything you could ever need, if they give you nothing, it's hard to say. So there's a few different steps. As you start to do this more and more and more, you'll find you do it automatically. So you start out with non-critical reading. What's actually on the paper? A lot of times it's a bunch of engineering mumbo-jumbo that doesn't make a whole lot of sense for what you're trying to do. Then you reread and you kind of skim. What I do is I go through, I look for any data bids, any information that's giving me a number, an acronym, something to help me narrow down these systems. After that, I'm thinking constantly about what have I run into before, what have I heard about, what kind of data do I think I need, what kind of data can I get right from the seed. So, first thing, what are we reading? Are we reading a theory? Are we reading a specific DTC code set criteria? Are we going through trouble trees or flowcharts? Are we on Identifix or an internet forum or whatever? Each one of these we're going to have to go through and treat it a different way. Theory, we can be pretty critical of. Something in a fixed database, I've seen all sorts of stuff go on there where you have a fix for a problem, it makes no sense at all. You're sitting there critical thinking, you're basically throw that out the window, that was luck, that was whatever. Why are we reading it? We got to keep this in mind. Are we reading it just to read it? Or are we reading it because we actually want to understand something? What do we hope to gain out of all this? You know, if you're skimming through and you're like, I'm going to learn this entire range management system in 5 minutes and be able to diagnose and start, it's not going to happen. If you're sitting there and you have it stuck in your mind it's a fuel injection problem, and all you focus on is fuel injection, you may be missing something way more important. We'll delve into that a little bit. Where are we reading it? Are we on the OEM website? Are we on an aftermarket information service? At which point, we all know translation errors happen, things don't always get moved over right. Are we on a forum, and what kind of forum are we on? Are we on a high quality one? Or are we on DIY lawnmower repair and somebody's walking me through how to fix my Dodge truck? It's all going to change. Social media, scan tool even, camera, troubleshooter, as Richard showed with the Altel, little information on the database. These are all small things that really do bring a lot of good information to the table. Other times it sends you out in the left field and it's terrible. How are we reading it? Are we looking for the silver bullet? Are we scrolling through there going, I replace this part, I'm good to go on that car? Are we rushed for time? Some of you guys who know me, I spent years working on equipment. I did landscape work, did a little bit of everything. Rush for time. You have never felt rush for time until there's some guy yelling at you, he's losing $2,000 to $5,000 an hour, that his machine's down, and you have no clue how it works. So that kind of plays into what you're reading, how well you're reading it, what you're doing. Do you understand the system? If you understand the system pretty well, you can shortcut a lot of stuff. If you don't need to learn how a transistor, how a PCM, how anything else works, and you want to know how Toyota or Nissan control the starting circuit, you cut out 3 or 4 paragraphs of that entire sheet, and you're ready to roll. You're focused in, or unfortunately, are you learning from scratch? You're running into an ADAS system you've never seen before, and you're trying to learn everything, seat of your pants as you're going. That's all going to screw with your mental state and make it easier or harder to get where you need to go. So what I generally do is I start out with my major topics. You got engine management, if that's what we want to learn about, that's what we're going. If we're going fuel injection control, what's controlling our starting? What's controlling our transmission shift? Lighting, whatever it may be. So I kind of quickly, mentally, sometimes on a piece of paper, run through there, note these major topics. Which ones I care about, which ones I don't. Any terminology or abbreviations that I'm not familiar with, ECM, TIPM, GEM, I mean, there's a million of them that get real confusing. I jot them down off to the side, I keep them in my mind. And the structure of our information. A lot of times people don't realize it, but the order that the information is presented in service information, is incredibly important. They put it in that order for a reason. Things are building on top of each other. So a lot of times our most basic, general, but very useful information is up top. Very specific stuff's down towards the bottom. If we know where we're going, we can quickly shortcut, get through a lot of that information a lot faster. I run into this a lot. Is it all available in one spot? Or do I have to jump around to 6 different sections of a manual to try to piece together what I want to do? And do these locations make sense? When I say that, what I'm really thinking about is, actually, we'll go to ADAS a little bit. How many people are going to sit there and think that, you know, something like a touch screen or an airbag is going to throw off an ADAS system? Maybe, maybe not. Why are we finding certain bits of information on a system in something that's seemingly unrelated? That's where we're kind of working in the back of our minds thinking, there's a reason manufacturers putting this information in here. It may be in a transmission system, it may be in an ADAS system, it may be in an engine control. There's a reason, even though it's seemingly unrelated, it's being put there. So they may not always tell us that, but we gotta keep that in mind. As far as is the structure useful to our personal needs, that comes down to honestly critically analyzing your own service information. I like all data. I use all data, I use Mitchell, I use OE. It all depends on what I'm doing at the time. If Mitchell's not giving me what I want to do, I'm not going to waste my time with it. I'm going to bounce out to something else and find what I need the fastest I can. And for people who don't have multiple information sources, you need to be doing the same thing. Whatever works best for you and allows you to find the most useful information quickest, that's what you need to use. Don't waste your time trying to, because this guy uses this, that's what we have to use. Nobody's going to be familiar with all OE service information structures. Nobody's going to know Mitchell and all that 100%. So use what works for you. A couple tools and techniques. I do notebook, paper and pen, whiteboard, brain, scribble it on the sidewalk and chalk, or whatever you got to do to keep track of your thoughts and keep track of where you're going with it. I can't tell you how many times I jumped into something, started testing, started reading about it, and I backtracked and did the same test 5 or 6 times different ways because I wasn't keeping track of my stuff. So there's a few ways, mind mapping, drawing a diagram out. That's real good if you're on your own time and you're learning something from scratch. You got the deductive order. We start from a generalized problem and complaint and assemble any information relating to it that we think is going to be useful. An engine is running rich. We start jotting down. We're mentally keeping track of what's going to cause this problem. Where can we go with it? Or we can do the inductive order. We have a very specific fault, a DTC, a hard DTC, a circuit code. Something that's consistent, something that's very specific, and we start working backwards, developing a game plan. So this is a mind map. Some of you guys may have seen these before, some may not have. Start with the basic concepts, start branching out. Like I said, not something you want to be doing sitting on a car unless you're real fast, but before or after you get done a job, great way to organize thoughts, great way to relearn stuff. So it gives you a whole bunch of freedom. You do it how you want to. It takes a lot of time. Great for in-depth learning and going back to it. These big words, not really important. I like putting a name to everything. So deductive, we already talked about a little bit. We start with what we know to be true in general, to find what is true in a specific case. As Jim, Brandon, and a bunch of others have said, 85% of what occurs on a vehicle happens on everything. 15% is year, make, model, manufacturer specific. We got laws of physics. They dictate how these things work. You got to keep this in mind. Inductive is how we're reasoning through when we know something to be true in a very specific case, and we need to work backwards until we find the root cause of failure. So we can find a hard fault. We know we have a failed EGR solenoid. Okay, why did it fail? We take a step back. What controls that? This PCM. What controls that? What tells it to do it? Until we find some place where we can determine our root cause of failure. And then abductive reasoning starts with an observation or a set of observations, and then we find the simplest and most likely explanation for it. Terminally called Occam's razor, simplest solution is normally the right one. Could we have 6 different modules that are all failed and acting up? And you could, possibly. Or it could be a simple wiring fault. We want to constantly be analyzing what we're doing and trying to figure out what's the most likely given all these symptoms. What do we share? What don't we share? Generally, this is what we're doing on a daily basis when we start looking at a customer's car. We start with a complaint and the customer's observations. We add our own observations to that and observations about the state of the vehicle. Like Justin said, everything's holistic now. I mean, you can't just look at one subsection of the car and hope to get anywhere. You need to be looking at everything, full system code scans. You need to be walking around that car and seeing if they're banging it in stuff all the time. They got soda all over the dashboard. How it smells. The fact that they got dog poo on the front seat. that's probably gonna give you a good indication down the line. It's somewhere you may wanna go. I've run into that, and it was terrible. So, one of the things is scan data, or learning in general. We'll kind of bounce through both of them. Richard did an excellent job of covering all that. This is from GMOE service information on displacement on demand system. There's a whole lot of stuff